My name is Jimmy Purdy, shop owner, master tech, transmission builder, and the host of the Gearbox Podcast. Here I talk with new and seasoned shop owners, as well as industry professionals about day-to-day operations within their own shops and all the failures and successes that come along the way. From what grinds your gears to having to shift gears in the automotive industry, this is the Gearbox Podcast. For knowing me for a collective of an hour of time we've communicated with each other in the past year.
Yeah,
I guess you know fairly quickly, right? When you get to talking to somebody.
Trust your instincts.
Yeah, a little bit.
And when you hear little rumors that people have, sometimes you'll hear something like somebody forgoes a sponsorship with ease because they refuse to do something that's outside of their comfort zone. I can appreciate that. Right?
Yeah.
Because it's about the passion, and it's about the intent and your view, and that's, to me, that's integrity, I guess.
That's the kind of the focus that I wanted to talk to you about is you're definitely a deep thinker, right? You have a lot of insight that obviously comes from a place of a lot of thought. And I think that's missing from a lot of other people. Not a lot, but we definitely there's ideas that are kind of like pop flies, right? Like we all get ideas and they're like flyers, right? This is like a fleeting thought. And yours always comes from a place of really deep insight, and you have to, it makes you think about it for a minute. Like, oh, okay, hold on a second. This seems like you spent a little bit of time thinking about this before you decided to open your mouth, which is always nice.
Did you see the post that I made about if you want to change yourself in the industry, be a polymath?
Yes.
Yeah, I learned that term yesterday doing some research on something. I'd never heard it described that way.
I've not heard it that way either. You threw me off with that one.
Yeah. And then, having a Greek mother who was raised in Greece and could read and write ancient Greek as well. So a lot of the old original root words and things like that, and ancient Latin is where the history comes from. And then one person posted on there that the Renaissance man came to mind. And in the research I was doing, the Renaissance man that term was a nod to the concept of learning a lot of different things and not trying to be an expert in all of them. And then somebody else brought up the whole jack of all trades, master of none. Did you see what the end of that quote is?
Right.
But better than master of one.
Right.
Because if you focus on only one thing, you get tunnel vision. So I guess I've always been curious. I've always liked to learn about all kinds of stuff. And yeah, if I have a flaw, it's the potential for analysis paralysis.
Yeah, and it goes back to like having all your eggs in one basket, right? Or staying in your lane. And it's like it's such a difficult, especially when you're new in any business, but in the automotive industry, right? Like, do you just go all in with all your eggs in one basket, or you just diversify and try to bring? And I think that's a struggle for me, right? I think it's a struggle in the first few years because you're trying to obviously keep car count out. You're trying to keep people coming in, but if you only focus on one aspect, it's really narrowing your focus down, and it gets kind of scary, right? Where you're like, okay, maybe I should bring in that car that I normally wouldn't because I'm slow, or so it's a difficult thought process, but it really gets down to like that deep level that I was just talking about, where I really need to know a little bit of everything, especially as an owner operator, right? You need to be marketing, you need to be out on the floor. I don't know how the guys do it that aren't technically blessed, I guess we'll put it that way. If they don't know how to fix the cars, I don't know how you run a shop without knowing how to actually actively work on the vehicles. but to have a little bit of touch of all that stuff and be able to oversight every part of the business, I feel like is an important part of it.
Boy, you're going to end up getting into just so many different areas with this free ranging conversation. The common wisdom is that I don't need anybody that understands what's going on with the car. I need salespeople. I need people with good communication skills.
I can appreciate that.
And yet then I see posts online where, here's a service advisor that wants some tool to be able to check and verify what their techs are telling them. Okay, what's going on there? Right? Does she not trust the technicians and what they're saying, or is she not confident in her understanding? What is it? But there's something there. And so, the risk is that the service advisor could try to do the job that really is the tech's job. And from an efficiency standpoint and from a customer communication standpoint, that creates issues. Oh, I scanned the car real quick and it's got a small evap code, and they go out and they screw the gas cap tighter and turn it off and say, see what happens, see if it comes back. What? And so I get where that thought process comes from. But then you get into, the story of Toyota. Toyota has always been very big on culture, and they grow from within. And I knew parts companies like this, drivers that were now district managers 25 years later. And they understand the entire cycle of the business, from putting the parts on the shelf to taking them to the customer to ordering to whatever. And those companies were wildly successful. And then they're sold to giant corporate entities that bring in, somebody who has the expertise in running a potato chip factory, and they completely blow it up. So can you manage something that you know nothing about? And Toyota had this thing where when they would go open a new facility or something like that, they would start with hundreds and hundreds of people that are from within the organization, and they would hire in and train in people. And the reason they did that was because in the realm of culture, it seems that culture is affected to some extent by majority. And if you have the majority of people that understand and live the culture, those that are brought in adapt to the culture you want. But if you bring in a whole bunch of people and you only have a minority of people who understand the culture, now they can shift your culture. And when Toyota got enamored with the concept of becoming the largest automaker, they partook in some growth that didn't follow their tried and true model, and they had to recover from that. So it's fascinating when you talk about that. That's a huge topic on its own.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, it dives deep, but looking back at like the mentality part of it, or like trying to keep the culture, and I mean, it's all mindset, I feel like, and it's the hardest thing and the most missed thing. Right. I did a lot of, at Apex here in the last week, did talk to a lot of other coaches and different companies about, different things. One of the things that really, really sparked my interest was the tech coaching, the technician coaching, and not technician training, technician coaching, and looking at the technicians as people, instead of just productivity, right?
Chattel?
Right. And it's like, yeah, we could put us in the back, or put them in the back and let them do their thing, and put the work out, and put all your effort and energy in the sales side and making sure the sales process is good. And it needs to be, but it needs to be both, right? But it was just interesting to give them an outlet or therapy, really, in a sense. But it really just, the more I think about it, and we talked before we came on about the post about me going to another shop and trying to feel that different culture. And I hated, like, I thought about that for way too long, because it's like, Man, it just looks like I'm trying to go steal someone's secret, right? That's what I said. It's like that's not like the point of it. So I'm just gonna post it and then I'll just take it from there because I don't want to explain in a small post what I'm like. Because the one thing most people do when they're trying to steal something is say they're not trying to steal something.
Yeah.
I'm not going to start with the post like, "Hey, I'm not looking to take your secrets," but it's like just to psychologically or like try to get into that mindset of like, what does that feel like? Because there's a feeling, right? That's really, really hard to explain when you go into any business where everybody is treated correctly, like Chick-fil-A, little culty now, but you know when you go there and everyone's like looks genuinely happy, like they say my pleasure without it sounding forced. It's like wow, it actually seems like everybody's enjoying themselves being here, and it's just a feeling that you can't really describe.
There, I saw a video of Simon Sinek. He was in a hotel and he walked up to one of the baristas and he was getting his coffee. And he asked him, he says, "How do you like your job?" And he said, "The kid didn't even miss a beat." And he said, "I love my job." And he's like, "Explain to me why." He says, "When I'm working here throughout the day, I have managers that come by and ask how I'm doing and see if there's anything they can do to make my job easier." He said, and they genuinely care that I've got everything I need to take care of my customers. He said, "I love working here." And then he said, "I also work in another hotel," which he didn't name, down the street. And he says, "There, all the managers do is walk around and try and catch us doing something wrong." And he said, "There, I just collect my paycheck, keep my head down, and go home." And that's kind of exactly what you're talking about, the difference between, this is a human and the type of management of people generally want to do a good job. And how do I remove barriers to them doing that? And if I can knock those barriers down and make it easier to do right than wrong, the performance will escalate.
Yeah, without seeing it, it's hard to believe it. I mean, we can all understand it and get behind it, but it's just one of those nuances, right? Do you think because we are either just people or because we're in the automotive industry, we're constantly looking for something wrong? I just feel like for me, like it's like the social media high or whatever you get, right? Like the what's the word for it? You know when you're getting a
The
positive
dopamine.
dopamine rush, right? But
Mm-hmm.
you're constantly looking for that hit. And when I have a vehicle come in for the last 10, 15 years and I find what the problem is, I'm rewarded, right? And I'm just like, I don't know the difference, right? So when I find something wrong in the processes of the business or something that an employee is doing wrong, it's like that hit of dopamine because I found the problem, you know? And do you think that breeds like a negative kind of like that negative culture doing that?
You talk about coaching technicians, and for at least a couple of decades, I've recognized that. And I said, you know, you get in a room full of technicians, and they're, you know, I complain, therefore I am. Um,
Yeah.
and they're really good at pointing out everything that's wrong. I won't name names, but a mutual person we both know is very good at this. And I have coached technicians over the years that this is what we do. We look for what's wrong. Why did the engineer build it like that? Look at how this is installed. Well, that's crazy. That'll never work. Look at this. This is broken. And that's what we do. And it can make us very negative people because that's what we focus on. And we can tend to do it with our friends and family too. And so, what I told them was one of the things that I did learn in my reading and study about sales and people and personality is when my job is out front and I'm talking with a customer, when I'm coaching somebody, I want to start off with what's good, what's right. Your brakes are in really good condition, but your tires are showing cords, right? So
Yeah.
so it's that balance of looking for what's right and acknowledging what's wrong. Because if you just hit somebody with, you know, oh, here I'm going to go. The 300% rule, we got to document everything and estimate it all and hit them with, boom, here's all the stuff that needs your money. That may not, for some people, be the best way to communicate with them. So
I think using that too can really change perspective of a lot of not just technicians, but a lot of people, right? And like I said, I don't know if that's just something because we've been rewarded in that sense, right? We've had that positive affirmation of if you find something wrong, here's your paycheck. And that's all we do all week long, right? Like keep finding the wrong stuff, keep finding the bad stuff, and that just spills over into personal life and yeah, business is personal, right? Like it's so hard to draw the line and spend all day looking for what's wrong and go home and not keep doing that same thing, right? On the mindset side. And I think finding more positive stuff, just like as you said, your brakes are good, but your tires are bad. One of the things that's really circulating around right now is taking, 3 or 4 pictures of good parts on the vehicle. And technicians are like, what are you talking about? Why would I take pictures of what's right? I'm looking for what's wrong. And I think that question was what really sparked my interest is like, why wouldn't you want to take pictures of something good of the vehicle, right? Like, well, because they've been trained to find what's bad. We've all have been, right? Same with customers that walk through the front door. We're all just looking for the ones that we can fire, right? And then it's like, and you see it all the time on online too, right? Like, oh, I got to fire a customer today. It's like it's almost rewarding, right? Because I found the problem, I found something bad, and I should be rewarded for firing this customer. Like, well, there's no other way to do that. You couldn't have like communicated better. And sure, there's probably a very small percentage that needs to maybe go somewhere else, but why? What is it that's so appalling that you have to say this isn't my customer, right? Or this isn't, I don't know. It's difficult without knowing the situation, but it still goes back to that fundamental level of trying to find a problem and trying to get rid of it and then being rewarded for that, right?
well, and you've noticed, I know, if you read any of the conversations, there are some people who will point out or ask questions. That's the one I love. They will ask questions because they have a curiosity. Well, how did you present it? How was the process handled and all those things? And they've respectfully submitted that you set yourself up for that angry customer that you fired because of how you do things. And that's a hard pill to swallow for some folks. And you can see the pushback on it. But then there's others that, how dare you question this? Everybody knows that this is reality and these customers just are so entitled. And I'm like, no, you're asking them to spend money and perhaps you haven't presented the value to them right. And to go back to your comment, Jimmy, of are we really that way? Think about how many people in this, I don't want to call it an industry because industries have standards and we really don't. And I'm stealing that line from a friend of mine who passed away by the name of Anthony Amoroso. He used to go by Guido because he looked like Father Guido Sarducci. He used to make that comment all the time back in the IATN days. We're not an industry because industries have standards, but think of how many people are in this that have never had any of the additional training, the communication skills, the public speaking, they haven't developed the rounding. And that's why you make that comment about coaching technicians and helping the person, not just the technical skill. And I think that's kind of fascinating. Maybe more of that helps change the industry.
Yeah, focus it on more of a career than a job, really, and I mean, not to get so deep into the new age woo woo stuff, but I mean, it really is though, right? I mean, we have so many more stimuli now going on in our day and age, right? There is a lot more mental capacity that's required than there used to be, right? We have people just ready and willing to troll you on the internet, to post stuff, to come after you, negative reviews, right? Trying to put something positive on the internet, and you got people that just want to say something negative about it. There's so much more of that going on than there ever has been. And so looking at the mindset and especially with the sales side, I mean, and you brought up, service advisor training and sales training, and I think that could be also removed and replaced with just basically therapy, right? For salespeople. I mean, when you got someone up front that's dealing with that many people every day, training a sales process is one thing, but how do they vent? How do they, you know, that's a tough job, man. And it just kind of encapsulates everything. But the one thing that was really intriguing to me is instead of doing so much technical training about the vehicle, like what about when they go home and they just got beat up all day and they got 3 diags wrong, and their managers are like, hey man, you've only put 4 hours of work in today, you better step it up tomorrow. Like, that's a really negative play. And then you're sitting under the hood of a car and your head's down for 8 hours, you're not talking to anybody, right? You're just in your own mind all day long. It's a dangerous place to be, for me anyway. And so that it was definitely intriguing to me, as well as like that is a missed opportunity for sure.
Um, so I've got a question for you, if you don't mind.
I love questions.
What do you think? I don't want to call anybody out by name, but there's people that I've been having conversations with, and there's a lot of interest in different things. One of them I will call out because they've put themselves out there. Um, do you remember the whole road to great technicians thing?
The
About
road to great,
the road to great technicians was
road to great. Yeah.
kind of a push a few years back, and it had Chris Chesney out there talking about it on a regular basis, and I think Donnie Cipher was involved in some of it. And the concept was competency based testing of technicians. So not just a paper test, um, not just a participation certificate. I attended this class, and I get a certificate to put on the wall. But actually, like aircraft mechanic or somebody where you have to take a written exam in the area you're looking for certification. And if you pass that, then you may be asked to demonstrate any of these 10 things that are within your area of expertise, and you have to demonstrate that you can actually do them live. So you demonstrate the competency beyond just the knowledge. And the idea was that will produce great technicians. Had you ever heard of that?
Nope.
Okay. So I don't know what's ever happened to it. It's kind of gone away. My question with that, because I'm always coming at things from a different angle, was if I do that, I think it's awesome. If I did that, what does a shop have to do to be qualified to put my certificate on their wall?
Oh, that's a good question.
Okay. And so again, this is me talking. This is nobody else's opinion. This is just me. I asked that question, and I always got crickets. Because to me, if I go through that and I demonstrate the proficiency and the knowledge to do something the way it's supposed to be done, and then I go to work at a shop that puts my certificate on the wall, and their process and their culture doesn't allow me to do things the way I'm trained and know how to do it, then does that certificate really have value? And so now we've got Dave Mackholtz, who has started that AvTech program of competency-based education for driver assist systems and EVs. And he's actually been joined by one of the people from training from Toyota, who retired from Toyota and joined his effort. Um, so I guess my question becomes, where is certification and training going, and where do we go from here? Because if somebody scored 73% average on A1 through A8, what are they called?
Oh, your master tech.
And if somebody scored 95%
Well,
average on
it's
those tests, what?
all the same,
All the same. There's no differentiators.
right?
Should there be?
For ASC, that is a tough question, right? Because there has to be a benchmark. So, and I get what ASC did, right? They lowered the bar to obviously increase the odds, right? Because the more positive affirmation you give to anyone, the more they're going to want to stick it out. And when you got a, in quotes, technician shortage going on, and you're getting guys that are feeling dejected, right? There's like, I can't pass this test, so I must not be, I'm gonna find something else to do. HVAC doesn't test me anything. I'll go to work for HVAC, right? It pays about the same. I don't have to be degraded because I couldn't pass a test. So I guess I'm getting off rails a little bit, but that testing process, I understand why they lowered that entry, right? Make it a little lower, make it a little easier, and get everybody in. I don't look at it that way, and you probably don't either. And it's probably a lot that kind of went through the tougher side of the auto industry, where I think it should be 85, 90%. And I think they should just raise the bar instead of giving it different levels.
Mm.
Just make the test, make the passing criteria higher. It needs to be 85%, needs to be 90%. And maybe on
Well,
your point, you could be like maybe a minor, or like I don't know, not a master technician, but you could probably come up with something creative that says, yeah, you're proficient in all areas, but you're only at an intermediate level, instead of saying everybody's a master. But I think that
so
just that's too many grays.
well, all right. Let me push back, and let me throw a concept at you that is starting to float around. There's some interesting conversations that are happening, but here's the conversation. Don't change it. Don't make it harder. You're talking about, I'm trying to tie this together. You're talking about coaching people holistically. All right. There's obviously a bunch of people who have passed the tests. Some of them take a few rounds at it, but they pass it. Right. You don't need to make it harder. Leave that where it stands. But you want to motivate people to improve themselves in all areas. Right. That
That's
that
the
would be
idea.
part of
Yeah.
coaching someone.
Hmm.
And so, what if there became a prestige that says, hey, your average score, or a score on an individual test, was in the 80s range. So you're certified with a gold star. And on this one, you're certified with a platinum star because you got into the 90s. All right. So those certificates now all say that you're certified, but now we go back to the academic structure and say, you're an honors graduate. Oh, you graduated summa cum laude, right? And we start bringing that concept of layers that acknowledge that person's performance. And so you have guys that wear the patch and they wear the bars because they take some pride in it. And it's not to knock people down for only having a 75%, but hey, we're going to acknowledge if you study and get this test up to an 80%. Or how about we take it one step farther? There's all this case certification of continuing education. What if you can document that you have taken training to improve yourself in your area of study, your field? And that adds to your ranking or your certification. And all this can be voluntary, but you create a carrot, not a stick, to ask people to elevate. And now you own a shop, right? And all your people are ASE certified and you're a Blue Seal shop. Or what if a percentage of your people are Blue Seal certified but have a higher performance level? Now there's a seal on your Blue Seal that indicates that you have promoted continuing education and high performance through coaching your technicians, and now you're not just like every other Blue Seal shop, and you can use that as a way to differentiate and market your business.
And I guess that goes back to your question a few minutes ago about what qualifications the shop should have to hire a technician that goes through that testing process, right? I mean, that would all kind of tie that together, right? That so, we further our technicians' education. That's why we require this testing application to make sure that you're proficient in your job. Um, I don't I don't see why that couldn't work. The main thing is for me anyway, and from what I've understood about everybody else's opinions, is it just doesn't mean anything to the consumer. Right. So why should we do this if we can't charge anymore, or if the consumer, the clients don't understand what it is? And I think that's a whole different marketing aspect that needs to be pushed a little bit more. Up in Canada, they got, you have to be a certified technician, right? You can't just work on cars. You can't just go to Harbor Freight and fill up the back of your truck and now you own a transmission shop, right? Like you gotta, they require you to do some testing and be certified. I think that should be in the States, but as soon as you
There are
say that,
places there are places in the States that do that.
yeah,
You have to have at a minimum a certification of the systems that you're working on, and if you don't, you have to be under the supervision of another technician that has that certification. So it's always made me crazy. um, there are states where if you're going to put glass in a vehicle, you have to hold a certification,
right.
right?
And that blows me away. But you can do tires and brakes with no
But you can do
certification.
tires and brakes without it. But somebody got a certification passed because from one of the things that I understood was like a passenger side airbag deploys against the windshield and then out towards you, because that it doesn't have the steering wheel to support it, but the glass has to support it in an accident.
Hmm.
And so when you put the glass in, it's got to be put in right, or else the airbag won't work. So it's a safety concern. Or in certain vehicles, it's part of the structural integrity of the vehicle because of how the vehicle's built. And so that glass has to be there. And so you got to be certified for that, but not to put on brakes. Um, and then when we talk about continuing education, everybody's all up in arms about you have to use the right equipment and follow service procedures and everything for recalibrating ADOS systems. And yet
But it's not a safety feature,
ADOS,
right? It's not viewed as a safety feature, right? It's still like an optional add-on, right? It's not viewed under the states or under the government as an actual safety feature. So if
it's,
it
it's
if it
not.
it's not that I understand.
It's becoming mandatory.
What I understand with the ADOS is basically an external, and if something is wrong with that system, there is no requirement to have it fixed. Now, after an accident, it's going to be fixed. But if your ADAS system is not working, there is no requirement to make sure that it's fixed yet. In
Yeah.
California, at
Some,
least,
some
right?
states, it is required to be
See,
working,
if
but
they come
very
in and
few.
there's codes in the ADAS system, there is no requirement that that vehicle has to have that fixed. So, and if it was a safety feature, in my opinion, I feel like there needs to be a requirement. If that came into the service center and it said, "Hey, you have codes for the ADAS. This needs to be fixed, or you're not re-registering your vehicle, or they're going to cancel your insurance, or whatever
Mm-hmm.
the mandate that they want to put on that." There is nothing attached to that right now. So, in my view, I don't see that as a safety feature.
But you don't see it as a safety feature because it's not legally required?
Um, that's one way to put it. Yeah,
Do you see ABS as a safety feature?
that's a good question. No, I don't know. Not under the same principles, right?
but ABS is a required.
I
Can
guess
you buy a vehicle in the U.S. now without ABS?
no, not new. No, it would be
Okay.
yeah, it's added. I guess back to your windshield thing, you have to be certified to put the windshield in because it's part of the safety of the vehicle. That's not required for ABS. Is not required for ADAS. I guess that's the point I was trying to get to. Is under the whatever umbrella they want to put that under as far as safety features on the vehicle, there is no requirement to have it fixed.
Have you seen an event recording from a vehicle that either went into automated emergency braking or the deceleration G-force exceeded a certain level? Have you ever seen any of that data? The stuff that's
No,
being recorded by some of these cars?
no.
Oh my goodness. Rate of deceleration, vehicle speed, um, pressure on the brake pedal, camera views, radar data of distance to target, rate of closure, estimated time to impact, of all the things that this vehicle is tracking. And of course, it's applying the brakes and it's calculating all that data based on how the system is supposed to perform. And then nobody's talking about the fact that this vehicle doesn't use dot 4. It's supposed to use one of the new ISO class 6 fluids, which is lighter and thinner because the brakes can't apply and release fast enough to perform at the level that they're supposed to without that fluid level in. And those are the kind of things that, to me, the knowledge of the systems and how they operate and how we take care of our clients is many times an issue in education and continuing education to breed awareness. And if we can start marketing that stuff and use it as a differentiator for why we support this and what it means to you in servicing your car, then that's a way. We talk about improving the industry all the time, but it's always focused around KPIs and car counts and average dollars of revenue in an hour and all those kinds of things. And all that stuff is good and it's important. But what about the concept of making our jobs easier through having the public develop a respect for what we do?
Yep.
Because, the HVAC guys, if you think they don't have to have training, um, you ought to see some of the programs that these guys have gone through in college and how they understand the physics of a refrigeration cycle and why we have people in our industry that, well, this thing isn't cooling, so I'm going to pull all the refrigerant out of it and put it back in and then see what it looks like.
Yeah.
And it's like, if the guy that comes to service your HVAC had to do that, um, you wouldn't ever want to pay the cost for a service visit,
Right.
right? But they don't have to do that because they understand the pressures and the temperatures and the performance. And heck, they even have computer programs that look at the whole concept of what the enthalpy of that system is supposed to be at different points on a specific humidity, and they can do all that stuff.
Or they should
And
anyway.
it doesn't work. They should anyway. It doesn't work any different really on the base level than what we deal with.
Yeah. Except ours goes down the highway at 80 miles an hour. And
Okay.
and you see maybe one or two a month, and then you don't see another problem for 2 or 3 months, and then all of a sudden you have five more. And not to debunk, not to go against what you're saying, but just trying to do is HVAC, right? You're doing it every single day. You become you're knowledgeable behind it, and you see the same problems day after day after day. You become very proficient with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where on the automotive side, you might not see one for 2 or 3 months because you've been too busy with other different types of problems on the vehicles, and then you got to go back to being an AC expert.
Where's your shop?
Pass Roll, California.
Okay. A lot of moderate temperatures.
Yeah, we're pretty temperate. I mean, we're pretty bougie too, right? So even if it's 75 degrees out, they like to have their AC going. So I'm not saying we don't see AC all year long, but we definitely get a little bit of a boom July, August when it gets to be 100 degrees for, a few hours a day, and then we're, back in the 70s the rest of the year. So we do get that huge push of AC, and then we won't see another one till probably maybe February or March, right? For AC problems. Maybe the occasional one they're like, hey, I'd like my AC working. I'm like, well, it's been like a high of 70, but okay, whatever you want to do. my,
I,
my
I
point
use
my point is like we don't see it. It takes a very long time for us anyway in this area to have a technician become very proficient with AC. And you can do the training, you can understand the operating principle, but we're all hands on. We like to see the problems, and that's the only way we learn. Most of us learn is getting in there, seeing what happens, and then understanding the concepts on the backside, which is probably not the right way to learn stuff, but also that's why we're in this industry, right? Is that we need to see a problem, we need to fix it with our hands, and then we understand it. That's how it works for me and a lot of other technicians that I've hired. It's pretty rare you got a guy that can just read the book, get certified, and then know exactly how that system operates, right? And be able, oh, I know exactly what the problem is because I read in the book that if this pressure here and that looks like that, then this is going to be the problem, right?
have you ever seen the learning pyramid?
I think you've talked about this before.
Yeah, I, I'm huge on it because Brian and I talked about this in the class we did at ASTA, and the sage on the stage, the download, heck, even watching a video, um, the learning from that, the retention is short, and it's a low percentage. The average person, if they just listen to a lecture, will retain somewhere around 10 to 15% of what they heard. Right?
Yeah,
When
if that,
you
yeah.
when you start doing things tactily, right, you get into the 50 to 60% range. And I think that's what people mistake for being hands-on learners
Okay.
is the amount of retention that happens when you physically do something while learning it is that creates additional connections in the brain. And so we learn through doing.
So you don't think we're special?
No, I think we're just normal. I think we're just normal, but
Yeah.
we have not practiced the other levels. And the other levels just above, more retention than just sitting and listening or watching a video, but more retention and just below the physical project is the discussion. It's Friday night shenanigans. It's going to, why do so many people go to tech training and conferences when the content has been the same for many of these things for years, and they keep going back? I think there's a couple things that drive that. The forgetting curve, which means that I don't do this enough, so I need to go sit in that class again and reinforce it because I don't have a mechanism to keep my competency up in it throughout the course of the year. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to take that class again. Okay, that's one piece. But I think the other thing that happens in the people that are regulars, what do they talk about? Oh, the networking. You just can't imagine the networking and the people you'll meet and the conversations you'll have at lunch. And you see some of the veterans that aren't even in the classes. They're sitting around in little tranches of people out in the lobbies having conversations all hours of the day. That's that 40 to 50% level of retention. And that's what draws people. And those conversations, those seminars, those things that a lot of people in our field didn't do in school. They didn't take the honors classes. They didn't take and have this, book discussions and that sort of thing. So they didn't do that. Now you go beyond that 60, 70%. You want to get up into that 80, 90, 100% of retention, teach somebody. So if you try to teach somebody else, which is what happens in those little conversations or in the live demonstrations, then now you hit that 90, 95% retention because you have to take everything you know and break it down and give it to somebody else. How do we take that culture and put it into automotive to create this realization that we're not special, but we can get better by mindfully practicing these other skills and communicating with each other, having the shop jam sessions where some techs get together, which we've seen around the country. Some techs get together and go, hey, check this out. Here's this new tool. Here's this technique I've learned. And here's how I learned it. And there's an opportunity for give and put, take, and back and forth. I went to South Carolina decades ago, traveled down to South Carolina to go to Tim Taylor's shop, and we had people from all over the country come in because it was put out on IATN that there was going to be a weekend jam session, and it was a bunch of techs around sharing tools, equipment, and techniques. And that's still stuck with me to this day. How do we socialize that, Jim?
Do you think a lot of it too is like comes from the old grumpy technician, right? You try to, the old grumpy mechanic in the back of the shop, try to ask him, hey, can you help me with this? And he has his way of doing it, but has no idea how to explain it. And so it's frustrating. And do you think having that process in your own mind as you yourself, the technician, I know how to do this. I know that when I see AC pressures that are high on the low side and low on the high side, I know exactly what to do, right? It's probably low. I'm going to do my recharge on it. Probably not going to work because I don't truly understand the system, but I know 9 times out of 10 that usually fixes that particular problem. But you don't want to explain that because it doesn't seem technically savvy. And so you have to break through that line of explaining it, like you said, as the teacher. And it's very difficult for someone to do that. And it's the next level of education, Does that make sense? Where it's like once you have to break it down to explain it to somebody else, you realize all the holes that are in your own process. And even though you're a really good technician, most of the time you just do it through speed and like repetition before you finally get it right. And I'm only saying this because I like with transmissions, when I first started building them, I would just build it, put it in, see if it worked. If it didn't, I pull it back out, put it back on the bench, see what went wrong, right? I don't think that's something I can explain to the next generation, right? I couldn't be like, well, this is what I do. I just give it my best shot. I throw it in there, see if it works. If not, I pull it back out. You do what? That's your process. And it's
But
like,
that was you learning. You're not like
right.
that now.
No, but in that process, I was still able to get a lot of work done. And if I was to train, someone coming into the industry, there's no way I could have used that. So it was
Yeah.
frustrating when someone asked me, "Hey, can you teach me how to do that?" It's like, no, right? I can't. And it's like, why can't you? It's like, because I don't really know what the hell I'm doing.
But you do. But you do now.
Right, right.
And
Eventually, you
so,
get to that
but
point.
through what you were doing was experimenting.
Right.
You were doing science.
You could
I
say
have an
that.
idea of what it is, and I'm going to do it, and I'm
My
going to do this.
hypothesis was that it was going to work.
And then you studied the results, and you found out, well, that didn't work,
Yeah, that wasn't it at all.
right? That's
Yeah.
experimentation. There's nothing wrong with that. That is an actual way of learning. The problem we have with that in the industry is I used to have this saying: if I school the vehicle, I get paid well for being the teacher. If the vehicle schools me, I don't expect the client to pay for my education.
That's very true. Yeah.
Right? And
Yep.
that's that balancing act. And unfortunately, I think sometimes the clients do pay for our education because we go like, that's just the way it is. And it maybe it is, but usually it's, well, we didn't understand the system as well as we needed to get there. So I guess my whole thought process, and yeah, you're right. I think about this stuff too much. But how do we socialize this idea of continual improvement of the person, the technique, the understanding of technology, how the brain works, how we learn? We don't have to become PhDs in brain science, but we have to acknowledge that this is how it works. We have to stop relying on experts to tell us what to do when we have the ability to learn enough to understand why we need to do something.
Yeah.
And I guess that's my pitch. That's the concept.
Yeah. And I guess
Is there's nothing wrong. Yeah, I used to walk into shops and be like, "Oh, college boy, Are you white shirt wearing? I won't say the words, right? Because they were taught that they didn't like math, they didn't like science, they didn't like to read, but they could fix things. And now we're in a, a occupation that requires us to read and understand technical information, understand concepts of physics in almost every system. Electricity is physics. How does it work? And unfortunately, if we don't understand that stuff, we end up with, why isn't it working? Ain't not no gas in it.
Yeah.
And sorry, I had to go there. And there's nothing wrong with learning and educating ourselves. Will it be tough for some folks? Yes. Is it impossible? No. I know a bunch of brilliant people that fix things and they're good at it. And if you can just encourage them to understand the why, that what they did worked, now their understanding is better and their level of performance will get better. Why did this customer buy and that one blew up? It's the same thing. To me, it's all the same. It's an awareness and an understanding and an ability to improve and realize, you know what? I don't know this as well as I do, as well as I think, as well as I think I do. And I'm going to try and fix that. Self
and
improvement.
and to circle back to your question, it's just ego. I mean, it's just plain straight up ego. How many times have you been in a technical seminar and didn't want to raise your hand and ask a question because you were worried about what everybody else in the class was going to think of you, right? And everyone wanting to jump, well, maybe not you personally, but everyone's so ready and willing to just jump on the guy that asked the stupid question, so the question's never asked, right? And it's like, who cares what the people think? For one, we're all here to learn, we're all in this class, but there's always that one person in the class that wants to be more educated than the instructor, is only there to prove to himself and everyone else there that they could be teaching that class, right?
You,
If,
you
and
know,
it's like, why are you sitting in here, man? Then go sign up and do the paperwork and teach your own damn class if you want to sit here and talk about how much better you are than the instructor.
and you can't do that. You can't. I've had those guys in class. They
Yeah,
want to
it's
play stuff. They want to
disrespectful,
play stuff
man.
to jump.
Yeah.
You brought up something, and I guess for years I would start off class. I'd introduce myself and say, "I don't know everything. Are we good?" Because that puts techs at ease. And the other thing that I was very passionate about is you talk about these you talk about these guys not wanting to ask a question. And I've taken over regions back in my training days. They're not very talkative. And 2 hours into my first night with a class, I couldn't get them to shut up because they got engaged. And I would say things like this, Jimmy. Um, if you have a question, ask it, because I don't view that as a shortfall on your standpoint. I view that as someplace for me to improve. If I have not explained something well enough for you to understand it, I want you to ask the question, because I guarantee you somebody else in here has the exact same question.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never throw a student under the bus. I had a guy in class one time. I was teaching an evap class back in the day, and we talked about the low pressure that was used to test an evap system, either positive or negative. And this guy in class was like nodding, going, "Yeah, right." And I said, "What happened?" And please excuse this language, but it was exactly what he said. I was out in Kansas teaching this class. He says, "Yeah, one of our guys was testing an evap canister, and he hit that thing with shop air, and that shit just blew up." Well, the room, I mean, I had 40 or 50 guys in there, and the room erupted, and I started laughing too. And I just went, "Okay, all right." And I pulled it down, and I said, "Look," I said, "nobody was hurt, right?" And he says, "No." He said, "But black shit went everywhere," right? All the charcoal beads went all over the shop. But never berate a student for asking a question or making a comment. I have seen instructors do that, and I'm just like, what? How would you crush the desire of that student to learn by asking a question just because you think it's not smart or whatever? So yeah, it's an issue, and that's a whole nother
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah. When you're talking about the training aspect and trying to get the everyone to buy into the process, I think, is just the main point there, right? And trying to, how do we change the thought process of training, right? And it's all those little nuances, I think. And this is my opinion, of course, but sitting there as a technician in some of those classes, it took a lot. It took a lot for me to engage, right? And then the more I engage, the more everyone else starts engaging. And you're like, oh wow, so I just need to be the first one to do it, and then you realize everybody else is thinking the same stuff you are, right? And then you always have the one in there that just wants to just prove themselves that they're smarter than everybody else in the class, and you're like, all right, well, good for you, you know.
You,
But
you know,
that's
that's
one of
one
the
of the
things.
biggest that's one of the biggest feedbacks that we've been hearing, and that was one of the reasons why, um, you know, Brian and I, when we would talk to class at ASTA, we were like, "You guys, this is going to be an interactive conversation. We are not going to stand here and lecture. You guys are going to have to talk and get engaged. And I guarantee you, we'll learn some stuff we didn't know from you. And if you don't want to talk, we've got these two chairs up here. We'll sit down and be quiet too." And that's not the norm that's expected at these training things. And I guess my question is, should it be?
As far
Because
as
remember the learning pyramid. If
you
we can get
know,
the room into discussion mode, the retention
it
goes up.
It yeah, it is true. And the more you have people teaching each other, one of the things I love is when the guys out on here at the shop, they start showing the processes to a new employee or reinforcing it to somebody else, right? And it's like the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It's like, oh, look at that. And then it's like it just feeds, right? Like as soon as you
Yep.
see someone teaching someone else the process that I've written, then it's like the feedback loop, right? And it's like now he's gonna ask the other technician, not come and ask for hey, how do I do this? It's like it's just beautiful. It grows, right? And I think that's the ultimate learning transition. But
You
it
just
really
got a dopamine hit. You just got a dopamine hit from watching something that wasn't broken. So
yeah, it's
now I'm
true.
challenging your perspective,
That's true.
right?
Yeah.
You
That's a
can
pause.
find those positive hits
Yeah.
by every time you drive that car you fixed, or that problem isn't there anymore. That's a reinforcement of dopamine. That's a
Yeah.
that's a positive hit.
A
So when you
positive
see
one.
that in your business,
Yeah,
bingo.
absolutely. And that was the big shift for me, right? A big mental shift. And I guess what kind of segued this whole conversation today, right? Like,
Yep.
because once you see the other side, you realize the other side. You can't see the other side unless you're on the other side, right? Um, but yeah, back to the training topic. It's if you have a bunch of people in that classroom or instructors that haven't seen that other side, that don't know that, then that's never going to work, right? And if you lack that engagement, so if you have an instructor like yourself or Brian that are in there that are trying to run the class based on that style of engagement, you got to lead. Was that leading with questions?
It's one of the books that's right back here on my desk.
Yeah,
you might you might
but
actually like that one
yeah,
as a shop owner, because it basically cautions you against answering the question of all your employees.
yeah,
Don't answer the question, ask them questions until they become confident in understanding.
that's very true. Yeah. If they're willing to listen to and I guess that goes with anyone in class or in the instructor that wants to run it that way, right? If you have an instructor that wants to run away with the whole class is just sitting there ready for a lecture, then it's not going to work, right? And I'll sit in any class. I don't mind a lecture and I don't mind being engaged. I'll sit there and I'll sit through the whole thing and take every bit I can because eventually I'll pick up something along the way. But can I expect everyone that's in training to want to have my mindset? I don't think that's a fair thing, and I can't expect everyone to want to learn like me or so that's tough. It's just like how do you get an all-encompassing training concept that will include everybody? And I think what you
You
do
know,
is try to find the statistics and say what's the majority that I need to market towards.
you know where the dopamine hit comes from on that? When you've done a class like that and the quiet person comes up to you at the break or after class and says, "Man, this was awesome. I know I didn't talk a lot, but man, have you got me thinking." Ta-da! That's stage one. And then the next time they're in class, they might feel comfortable to engage. What did we just do with that person? We coached them a little bit because we showed them a different world. We showed them a different world.
Yeah.
And that's what makes me keep going and stay, true to some of these things that I've studied and come to believe. I mean, I taught martial arts for 11 years, and I was at the school 4 to 6 nights a week and training and teaching, and to watch people grow and to realize that it was a journey and a constant path of reinforcement, and that the key to the advanced stuff is in the basics. And to quote Brian Pollock, we don't have to take an 18-channel scope and determine the phase of the moon to solve 99% of the problems we see day in and day out. Right?
Yeah.
I can fix a lot of things with a test light and a voltmeter.
Yeah.
So
I guess, and the last couple things here and last thoughts, when it comes to this stuff and training, do you think it's more important to get, when you're in training, to walk away with something that immediately helps you, or do you think it's more important to change the mindset of the person that's sitting in the class to understand that training is much more valuable than just going looking for the answer to the one problem that you have in the shop?
I've heard it said a lot. Find one thing that you can take back and use in the bay tomorrow. And I think too often that's, look at this test, look at this technique, look at this tool. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of it becomes. But if you can walk away with one concept, even if it's as simple as just read the factory manual if you don't know, right?
Yeah.
That's what RTFM stands for, by the way. So if you just go and read about something you don't know, and if that's a concept that you take out of a class, that's a win. Because if you're trying to fix something and asking yourself questions, and that class just helped you ask better questions, you've taken something away. So don't look for something exciting and some cool, flashy thing every time in training, but look for some thought that changes how you approach your job, and you will get better.
That's huge. Yeah, if you're listening, rewind that and listen to that again. Listen to that a couple more times.
Say it louder for the people who no,
In the
never
back, yeah.
No,
All right on.
that's what I go in with. And I'm always looking for that new concept, and sometimes it's a learner in the room that gives it to me. I
Yeah.
didn't ever think about it like that because they have a different experience. So
That's what you should have. You should have plants in the back of the class that are actually like an instructor, right? So because no one wants to listen to the actual teacher, right? So you just have someone that's just in the class as a plant and just kind of feeding out little things here and there. Because you're right. I think a lot of the times we listen to our peers more than we do the instructor, right? So maybe use that as a concept. Maybe put a plant in the back. Put the actual instructor, have him sit with the classes, have some goofball up front just jabbering away.
The nice part is when you know people in the room and you call them out. Come on, tell the story. I know you know about this. Share your perspective. I'm going to shut up. You listen to them for a while.
I'm not sitting in any of your classes.
Oh, come on, man. Dive in. The water's fun.
Well, Jim, this has been extremely insightful. What's that?
I've enjoyed this. Thank you
Yes.
for having a nice chat.
There's definitely a lot of insightful stuff that's I'm going to have to go back and listen to it myself to understand.
I am not inciting a riot, though. Just anyway. Oh, words mean
Oh.
things, Jimmy.
Sometimes they do, don't they? And it's
Yeah,
not what you say, but how you say it.
that's
So
right. Well, what's the old expression? Emphasis, right? Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. That's how we hear that quote. And it sounds confident, just go, right? But it also could have been, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. And that's a completely different
that
picture.
is. Oh, I like the Uncle Jack when you're helping your Uncle Jack off of a horse.
Yes.
Just make sure that comma is in the middle there. It's
Yes.
very, very important that you pause at this very specific time in that
Yes.
statement.
Let's eat grandma, right? Oh,
Same thing, right?
you're
It's not
too
what
much.
you not what you say, but how you say it.
Yep, absolutely.
Well,
All
thanks
right,
again,
man.
Jim.
Thanks.